The wine glass shattered against the restaurant floor, fragments catching the light like diamonds before disappearing into darkness. Time slowed as faces turned toward our corner of the dining room, some curious, some shocked, some delighted by the unexpected theater. My husband's face drained of color as he locked eyes with me across the narrow space between our tables. Beside me, Mark's expression hardened as he stared at his wife, the woman who had been secretly meeting my husband for months. "What a coincidence running into you here, David," I said, my voice carrying through the sudden silence. "Aren't you going to introduce me to your friend?" 3 weeks earlier, I was happy. Or at least, I thought I was. Rain pelted against the bedroom window as I folded laundry, listening to the steady rhythm while sorting David's shirts from mine. 12 years of marriage had settled us into comfortable patterns. David, my high school sweetheart turned husband, had grown from an ambitious college graduate into a successful investment banker. I had built my interior design business from scratch, and we'd created what I believed was a good life together. The notification sound from David's iPad broke my concentration. He'd left it charging on the nightstand before heading to his Saturday golf game. Normally, I wouldn't have looked. I respected his privacy as he respected mine. But the device kept chiming insistently, and thinking it might be important, I glanced at the screen. A series of text messages flashed across it. "Can't wait for next Thursday. Same place? Yes. 8 p.m. I've missed you. I'll book our usual table at Oriole. The private corner." The sender's name showed as Elise C. with a small red heart emoji beside it. My hands turned cold. I stood frozen, staring at the messages, trying to find an innocent explanation. Maybe a client? A colleague? But the heart, the tone, the secrecy, it all pointed to one terrible truth. I sat heavily on the edge of the bed, David's freshly laundered shirt still clutched in my hands. I unlocked the iPad with the passcode I wasn't supposed to know, his birthday backwards, hardly original, and opened the message thread. What I found confirmed my worst fears. Months of messages. Secret meetings. Intimate photos. Plans for their future, a future that clearly didn't include me. Elise Carrington. The name was vaguely familiar. I searched my memory and suddenly placed her, the vivacious brunette from David's company party last Christmas. She'd been there with her husband, a quiet, distinguished-looking man who'd mainly kept to himself while she charmed everyone around her. I remember David introducing them. "This is Mark and Elise Carrington. Mark heads our legal department." That's why the name had seemed familiar. Mark Carrington, David had mentioned him occasionally, always with respect. And now David was sleeping with the man's wife. I didn't cry. Not then. Instead, a strange calm washed over me as I methodically scrolled through their messages, taking screenshots, forwarding evidence to my own email. A plan was already forming in my mind, but I needed time to think, to gather information. When David returned from golf, soaked and complaining about the rain cutting his game short, I greeted him normally, the dutiful wife. He kissed my cheek absently and headed for the shower, unaware that everything had changed. That night, lying beside him in our bed, listening to his familiar breathing, I stared at the ceiling and made my decision. I wouldn't confront him, not yet. I wouldn't give him the chance to lie, to manipulate me with excuses and false promises. No, I wanted him to feel what I was feeling. I wanted him to know what it was like to have your world shattered in public, among watching eyes. I wanted Elise to feel it too. And most of all, I wanted justice, not just for me, but for Mark Carrington as well. He deserved to know the truth. And I knew exactly how I was going to tell him. Sunday morning brought weak sunshine after the previous day's rain. David was still asleep when I slipped out of bed, dressed quietly, and drove to the coffee shop across town, somewhere I was certain not to run into anyone we knew. I ordered a large black coffee and settled into a corner table with my laptop. Time to learn everything I could about Mark and Elise Carrington. Social media made my task almost too easy. Elise's Instagram account was public, filled with carefully curated images of her perfect life. Expensive vacations, charity galas, designer outfits. Mark appeared in some photos, always looking slightly uncomfortable in front of the camera, but smiling dutifully beside his wife. Their anniversary was highlighted in a post from 8 months ago. 12 amazing years with this man. #blessed #anniversary Elise had written beneath a photo of them toasting with champagne. The same number of years David and I had been married. The irony wasn't lost on me. I found Mark's LinkedIn profile next. Unlike his wife's showy social media presence, his was straightforward and professional. Harvard Law. Senior partner at his previous firm before joining David's company as head legal counsel 3 years ago. Respectable career trajectory. Board member for a children's literacy foundation. He seemed like a decent man. A man who, like me, had been betrayed by the person he trusted most. My coffee grew cold as I continued my search. I found their address, learned about their social circles, discovered which restaurants they frequented. I learned that Mark traveled often for work, information that aligned with the dates of many meetings between David and Elise. And then I found something unexpected, a business card website for a small photography studio listed under Mark's name. Carrington Photography, capturing moments that matter. I clicked through to a gallery showing landscapes, architectural shots, street photography. The work was surprisingly good, soulful, even. This man had an artist's eye hiding behind his corporate lawyer exterior. By the time I returned home, David was up and making breakfast, whistling tunelessly. He smiled when I walked in. "There you are. I was wondering where you'd disappeared to." "Just needed some fresh air," I replied, hanging my jacket carefully. "Thought I'd let you sleep in." "You're the best," he said, dropping a kiss on my forehead as he passed me a plate of eggs. "I was thinking we could check out that new exhibit at the museum today?" I studied him as he talked. This man I'd shared a bed with for 12 years. This man who could make breakfast and suggest museum dates while planning secret rendezvous with another man's wife. The disconnect was staggering. "Sounds perfect," I said, forcing a smile. We spent the day wandering through gallery halls, looking at art neither of us was truly seeing. David held my hand, pointed out his favorite pieces, bought me lunch at the museum cafe. The perfect husband, except for the secret life I now knew about. That night, after he fell asleep, I slipped out of bed again and sent an email from an account I created that afternoon. To mark.carrington@carringtonphotography.com. Subject: Important information, please read privately. Mr. Carrington. I have information concerning your wife and my husband that I believe you should know. If you're willing to hear me out, please meet me at Riverside Coffee on 9th Street this Tuesday at 3 p.m. I'll be wearing a blue scarf. This is not a joke or a scam. I wish it were. Catherine Moore. I hesitated before pressing send, my finger hovering over the trackpad. Was I really going to do this? Involve a stranger in my marital disaster? But he wasn't a stranger, not really. He was the other victim in this betrayal. I clicked send, then closed the laptop and returned to bed, lying awake beside my sleeping husband until dawn crept through the curtains. Tuesday afternoon found me at Riverside Coffee half an hour early, nerves making my hands tremble slightly as I arranged and rearranged the blue scarf around my neck. The cafe was busy enough to provide anonymity but quiet enough for a private conversation. I'd chosen a corner table with a view of the door. When Mark Carrington walked in at precisely 3 p.m., I recognized him immediately from the photos I'd studied. Tall, broad-shouldered, with salt and pepper hair and a serious expression. He wore a well-tailored gray suit with no tie, dressed for the office but slightly less formal. His eyes scanned the room until they found my blue scarf, and he approached with measured steps. "Catherine Moore?" he asked, his voice deep and calm. I nodded, gesturing to the chair across from me. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Carrington." "Mark, please." He sat down, studying me with intense blue eyes. "Your email was concerning. You mentioned my wife and your husband?" A waitress approached before I could answer. Mark ordered black coffee, waited until she left, then turned back to me with an expectant look. I took a deep breath. My husband is David Moore. He works at Pinnacle Investments. Recognition flashed across his face. David Moore. Yes, I know him. He's in portfolio management. And he's been having an affair with your wife for at least 6 months. The words hung between us. Mark's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes, a darkening, a pulling inward. He stayed completely still for several long seconds. That's a serious accusation, he finally said, his voice perfectly controlled. I assume you have evidence. I opened my bag and pulled out a folder containing printouts of text messages, photos, hotel receipts, all carefully organized and annotated with dates. I pushed it across the table. I found out 3 days ago, I explained as he opened the folder. David left his iPad unlocked. They're planning to meet this Thursday at Oriole Restaurant. 8 p.m. Mark flipped through the pages methodically, his lawyer's mind clearly cataloging and analyzing each piece of evidence. His composure was remarkable and slightly unnerving. Only the whitening of his knuckles as he gripped the folder betrayed any emotion. 6 months, he murmured, more to himself than to me. 6 months. When he looked up, something had hardened in his expression. Why are you showing me this? Why not just confront your husband? I wrapped my hands around my coffee cup, drawing warmth from it. Because I don't want a private confrontation where he can lie, manipulate, or charm his way out of it. I hesitated, searching for the right words. I want consequences. Public ones. And I thought you deserved to know the truth. Mark nodded slowly, closing the folder. And what do you propose we do with this information? I leaned forward slightly. They're meeting Thursday at Oriole. I thought we might join them. You want to confront them at the restaurant? Make a scene? He frowned. That seems. Not a scene, I corrected. A controlled revelation. I've already called Oriole. There's a table available right next to their usual spot. I thought we could arrive first, then watch their faces when they see us together. Mark was silent for a long moment, considering. Then, unexpectedly, one corner of his mouth lifted in a small, tight smile. You've thought this through. I've had 3 days with nothing else on my mind. He nodded again, then reached for his coffee. Tell me about yourself, Catherine. What do you do when you're not planning elaborate revenge scenarios? The question caught me off guard. I'm an interior designer. I have my own small firm. Successful? Yes, actually. I built a solid client base over the years. Children? I shook my head. We always said we were waiting for the right time. Now I'm grateful we didn't get that far. Mark took a sip of his coffee. We have a daughter. She's away at high school now, Columbia. Pride briefly softened his features before the gravity of our situation returned. Elise and I, things haven't been right for some time. But I never thought. He trailed off, then shook his head slightly. It doesn't matter what I thought. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it. As am I. He studied me for a moment. Your plan. It has merit, but it's missing something. What? Follow through. What happens after the reveal? Have you considered the endgame? I hesitated. Honestly, I've been so focused on the moment of confrontation that I haven't thought much beyond it. Mark nodded. Understandable. But if we're going to do this, we should be strategic. This isn't just about catching them in the act, it's about positioning ourselves for what comes after. The lawyer in him was taking over, and I found it oddly reassuring. His analytical approach balanced my emotional turmoil. What do you suggest? I asked. First, documentation. The restaurant encounter should be recorded, discreetly, of course. Not for public sharing, but for potential legal proceedings. He paused. Are you planning to divorce David? The question hit me like a physical blow, even though I'd been thinking about little else. Hearing it spoken aloud made it real in a way it hadn't been before. Yes, I said, surprising myself with the firmness of my response. Yes, I am. Then we need to ensure the evidence is properly preserved and that your confrontation doesn't undermine potential settlement negotiations. He checked his watch. I have a meeting in 30 minutes, but I'd like to continue this conversation. Are you free for dinner tonight? Tonight? I hadn't expected this development. If we're going to be dining companions on Thursday, we should at least know each other better than we do now. His expression remained serious, but there was something almost gentle in his tone. Besides, I have some ideas about how to refine your plan. All right, I agreed. Dinner tonight. Mark took out a business card and wrote an address on the back. 7 o'clock. It's a small Italian place, quiet, discreet. No one from our social circles is likely to see us there. As he stood to leave, I asked the question that had been nagging at me. Why are you taking this so calmly? I was a wreck when I found out. Mark buttoned his suit jacket before answering. Ms. Moore, Catherine, I've spent 20 years in corporate law. I've learned to save my reactions for after I've gathered all the facts and formulated a response. He picked up the folder of evidence. May I keep this? I nodded. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. Many wouldn't have. He extended his hand, and I shook it. His grip was firm but not aggressive. I'll see you at 7. After he left, I remained at the table, turning my coffee cup in slow circles. Mark Carrington wasn't what I had expected. I'd anticipated anger, shock, perhaps denial. Instead, I'd found a controlled, methodical ally who seemed almost grateful for the truth. I wondered what he was really thinking behind that composed exterior, and what plans were forming in that legal mind of his. Most of all, I wondered if I'd done the right thing by setting these events in motion. Too late to turn back now. The Italian restaurant was tucked away on a side street, its exterior unassuming but elegant. Inside, warm lighting cast a golden glow over rustic wooden tables. Classical music played softly in the background. The maitre d' led me to a corner table where Mark was already seated, examining the wine list. He stood as I approached, that old-fashioned courtesy catching me off guard again. Catherine. Thank you for coming. Thank you for the invitation, I replied, taking the seat across from him. Mark had changed from his business suit into dark jeans and a navy blazer over a gray shirt, casual but still put together. I'd opted for a simple black dress, not wanting to appear as though I'd tried too hard, but still feeling the need to look composed. I took the liberty of ordering wine, he said. A Barolo. Unless you prefer something else? Barolo is fine. The waiter arrived with the bottle, went through the tasting ritual with Mark, then poured us each a glass before leaving with our dinner orders. I've been thinking about your husband, Mark said once we were alone. I've interacted with him at company functions, of course, but I don't know much about him personally. I took a sip of wine, letting the complex flavors ground me before responding. What would you like to know? How long have you been together? We met in high school. Started dating in college. Married right after graduation. So, almost 18 years together, 12 of them married. Mark nodded slowly. And were you happy? Before this? The question made me pause. Was I happy? Had we been happy? I thought we were, I said finally. Not perfect, but solid. David was always ambitious, always working toward the next thing, promotion, bonus, bigger house. Sometimes I felt like I was part of his life plan rather than his partner, but I shrugged. I accepted that as his nature. And you? What's your nature? I smiled slightly. Are you analyzing me, counselor? Professional habit. He apologized. No, it's fine. I considered the question seriously. I'm a planner too, but different from David. I care about creating spaces where people feel at home, comfortable. In my work and in my personal life. Hence the interior design career. Exactly. Our first courses arrived, antipasto for him, caprese salad for me. We ate in silence for a few moments. Your turn, I said eventually. Tell me about your marriage. Mark set down his fork and took a sip of wine before answering. Elise and I met at a charity function in Boston. I was 32, just made partner at my firm. She was 26, working in public relations. Beautiful, charismatic, ambitious. A shadow crossed his face. We had good years. Built a life, raised our daughter. But somewhere along the way, we started wanting different things. What did she want? Status. Recognition. The right address, the right friends, the right vacations to post on Instagram. His tone wasn't bitter, merely factual. And I wanted. What? I prompted when he trailed off. Mark gestured vaguely. Something authentic. I grew up with very little. My father was a factory worker, my mother a teacher's aide. I worked my way through college and law school. The trappings of wealth were never my motivation. Hence the photography, I said. He looked surprised. You know about that? I did my research before contacting you. Your work is beautiful. A genuine smile briefly transformed his face. Thank you. It's my escape. Elise calls it my hobby, but it's more than that. It's the one thing I do solely for myself. I'd like to see more of it sometime, I said, surprising myself with the sincerity of the statement. The main courses arrived, interrupting the moment. Over pasta and risotto, we shifted to discussing our plan for Thursday night. Mark had indeed refined my original idea, adding nuanced details that balanced impact with discretion. The key, he explained, is to control the narrative. We don't want to appear as victims or scorned spouses creating a spectacle. We want to project calm strength. We're two adults who discovered a betrayal and are handling it with dignity. While still ensuring they feel the full weight of what they've done, I added. Precisely. Mark's eyes met mine over the rim of his wine glass. The greatest power in any confrontation is staying composed while the other party loses control. By the time we finished dinner and shared a tiramisu, his suggestion, they make it tableside, it's quite something, I felt a curious connection forming between us. Not romantic, we were both far too raw for that, but a kind of allied understanding. Two people thrust together by circumstance, finding unexpected common ground. As we walked to our cars afterward, Mark said, "Thank you for tonight, Catherine. It's been unexpectedly pleasant, given the circumstances." I was thinking the same thing. I hesitated. It's strange, isn't it? If not for our spouse's betrayal, we'd probably never have had a conversation beyond small talk at a company function. Life's little ironies. He stopped beside my car. I'll contact you tomorrow with the final arrangements for Thursday. If you change your mind about any of this, just say the word. I won't change my mind. He studied me for a moment. No, I don't believe you will. Then, formally, good night, Catherine. Good night, Mark. Driving home, I wondered what David would say if I told him I'd just had dinner with Mark Carrington. The thought almost made me laugh, a sharp, slightly hysterical sound in the quiet car. I was living a double life now too, keeping secrets, making plans in the shadows. The difference was, my secrets were about to bring everything into the light. Wednesday crawled by with excruciating slowness. I moved through my daily routines like an actress playing the role of Catherine Moore, devoted wife. I prepared breakfast, kissed David goodbye as he left for work, attended client meetings, sketched design concepts, and returned home to make dinner. All while carrying the weight of knowing that tomorrow night, everything would change. David seemed different too, though I doubted he realized it. More attentive, perhaps compensating for what he planned to do the following evening. He brought home flowers, lilies, my favorite, and suggested we watch that British detective series I'd been wanting to see. You've seemed distant lately, he said as we cleaned up after dinner. Everything okay? The question nearly broke my composure. The audacity of his concern, his pretense of being the caring husband while planning to meet his mistress the very next night. Just busy with the Hendersons' project, I lied. Their renovation is getting complicated. Don't work too hard. He kissed my temple. I worry about you sometimes. I almost laughed in his face. Instead, I leaned into the kiss and murmured agreement. That night, as David slept beside me, I received a text from an unknown number. Arrangements confirmed for tomorrow. Table reserved under my name for 7:30 p.m. We'll send car for you at 7. MC. I deleted the message immediately. Thursday morning dawned bright and clear. David was unusually particular about his appearance, spending extra time on his hair, selecting one of his best suits. Important client meeting? I asked innocently, watching him from the bedroom doorway. Just a dinner thing, he replied vaguely. Might run late, don't wait up. Should I be jealous? I forced a teasing tone. David crossed the room and wrapped his arms around me. Never. You're the only woman in my life. He kissed me deeply, and I kissed him back while my stomach churned with disgust, both for him and for myself, playing this charade. After he left, I threw up in the bathroom, heaving until there was nothing left but bitter bile. Then I showered, washing away the feeling of his hands, his lips, his lies. The day passed in a blur of activities that required just enough focus to keep me from completely unraveling. I cancelled my afternoon appointments, unable to maintain the pretense of normality any longer. At 5 p.m., I began preparing. I chose my outfit carefully, a deep burgundy dress that I knew highlighted my best features without appearing as though I was trying too hard. Professional makeup, elegant but understated jewelry. Hair styled to frame my face. The overall effect was confident, composed, perhaps even intimidating. Exactly what I needed to be. At 7 p.m. sharp, my phone buzzed with a text, car waiting outside. I took one last look around our home, the space I'd lovingly designed over the years, filled with memories and mementos of a marriage I now understood had been built on quicksand. I wondered if I would ever return here, and if so, under what circumstances. Then I grabbed my purse and walked out the door. A sleek black car was idling at the curb, driver standing beside it. He opened the door for me, and I slid into the back seat to find Mark already inside. Catherine. He nodded in greeting, looking impeccable in a charcoal suit. You look formidable. That was the goal. I studied him in return. As do you. The drive to Oriole was mostly silent, both of us seemingly lost in our thoughts, mentally preparing for what lay ahead. Only as the car pulled up to the restaurant did Mark speak again. Last chance to reconsider. I met his gaze steadily. Are you having second thoughts? No. His answer was immediate. But this will change everything, for all of us. I want to be certain you're ready for that. I thought of David's kiss that morning, his declaration that I was the only woman in his life, the casual ease of his deception. I'm ready, I said firmly. Let's go. Mark nodded once, then offered his arm as we exited the car. Together, we walked into the restaurant, exactly on schedule for our reservation, and 30 minutes before our spouses were due to arrive. Everything was going according to plan. Oriole was exactly the type of restaurant David would choose for an illicit meeting, upscale but not ostentatious, with a reputation for discretion and a layout that offered secluded corners for intimate conversations. Soft lighting cast a flattering glow over the diners, and the ambient noise level provided privacy without requiring whispers. The maitre d' greeted Mark by name, apparently he was known here, and led us to our table, positioned exactly as I'd hoped, around a slight corner from the main dining room, with a clear view of the entrance and, most importantly, the table directly adjacent to ours. That table, their usual spot, according to David's messages, remained empty, awaiting its 8 p.m. reservation. Champagne to start? Mark suggested as we settled in. When I nodded, he ordered a bottle of Veuve Clicquot. To steady the nerves, he explained when the waiter had gone. Though you appear remarkably calm. Appearances can be deceiving. I smoothed my napkin across my lap. My heart is racing. As is mine. His admission surprised me, he seemed so composed. But we've come this far. No turning back now. The champagne arrived, and we went through the motions of ordering appetizers neither of us would likely remember eating. The minutes ticked by with excruciating slowness. I checked my watch repeatedly, earning a gentle look from Mark. Try to appear engaged in our conversation, he advised. We want them to see us enjoying ourselves, not anxiously awaiting their arrival. I nodded and made a conscious effort to relax my posture. Tell me about your daughter, I suggested. You mentioned she's at Columbia? Mark's expression softened, as it had before when discussing his child. Sophia. She's in her 11th grade. Brilliant girl, takes after her mother in looks but thankfully got my common sense. His wry tone made me smile despite my tension. Do you have a picture? He pulled out his phone and showed me a photo of a striking young woman with dark hair and her father's intense blue eyes, smiling beside Mark. She's beautiful, I said sincerely. She's the one thing I got right, he replied, putting the phone away. Whatever happens with Elise and me, Sophia remains my priority. Does she know about your marital problems? She knows things aren't ideal between her mother and me, but not specifics. She's focused on her studies right now, and he stopped abruptly, his gaze shifting to a point over my shoulder. They're here. My pulse spiked. I forced myself not to turn around immediately, instead taking a deliberate sip of champagne. Together? I asked quietly. No. Just your husband. He's speaking with the host. Mark's expression remained neutral, but I caught the slight tightening around his eyes. Now he's being led to the table behind you. He hasn't noticed us yet. I gradually shifted in my chair, angling myself so I could see without being obvious. David was indeed being seated at the adjacent table, his back partially to us, checking his watch and scanning the restaurant entrance, looking for Elise. Shall we wait for her arrival, or make our presence known now? Mark asked, his voice low. I considered. Let's wait. I want to see their faces when they first see each other, that moment of private conspiracy before they realize they've been discovered. Mark nodded approval. Patience rewards the prepared. We continued our performance of normal dinner conversation, discussing safe topics like favorite films and travel destinations, all while hyper-aware of David's proximity. He ordered a scotch and checked his phone repeatedly, clearly anxious about Elise's whereabouts. At 8:15, she arrived. I recognized her immediately from the company party and the photos in her Instagram feed. Elise Carrington made an entrance even when she wasn't trying, tall, curvaceous, with glossy dark hair cascading over her shoulders. She wore a sleek blue dress that hugged her figure and heels that clicked confidently across the floor as she approached David's table. His face lit up when he saw her, an expression of genuine delight that stabbed me through the heart. He stood, greeting her with a kiss that lingered just a moment too long for business acquaintances, his hand resting possessively at the small of her back as she sat. Well, Mark murmured, watching them with narrowed eyes. There it is. I couldn't look away as David leaned close to Elise, saying something that made her laugh and touch his arm. The easy intimacy between them told a story of many such meetings, many such touches. Ready? Mark asked, his voice steady despite the slight tremor I detected in his hand as he set down his champagne glass. I took a deep breath and nodded. Ready. Mark stood and extended his hand to me, helping me from my chair. Together, we stepped the short distance to the adjacent table, appearing suddenly in David and Elise's line of sight. The effect was immediate and dramatic. David froze mid-sentence, his face draining of color as he registered my presence. Beside him, Elise's eyes widened in shock as she recognized her husband. David, I said pleasantly. What a surprise running into you here. Catherine? He stood abruptly, nearly knocking over his scotch. What are you? How did you? Good evening, David, Mark said, his tone perfectly modulated. Elise. What a coincidence finding you both here. Elise recovered faster than David, her social training kicking in despite her evident distress. Mark. Catherine. Are you two, together? The implication was clear, and I saw a flash of hope in David's eyes, thinking perhaps he could turn this around, accuse me of the very betrayal he was committing. Actually, I replied smoothly, Mark and I just met a few days ago, when I discovered that my husband has been sleeping with his wife for the past 6 months. The words fell like stones into still water, sending ripples of reaction through both their faces. Around us, nearby diners were beginning to notice the tension, a few heads turning our way. Kathy, this isn't, we should discuss this privately, David began, reaching for my arm. I stepped back, avoiding his touch. Privately? Like the private room you booked at the Westlake Hotel last month? Or the private weekend in Napa while I thought you were at a conference? Elise, Mark said, his calm somehow more devastating than any shouting could have been. Would you like to explain the text messages? The hotel receipts? The plans for a future that apparently didn't include either of us? Elise's perfect composure cracked. You went through my phone? Her voice rose slightly. You had no right. No right? Mark's eyebrow arched. As your husband of 12 years, I had no right to know you were betraying our marriage vows? Keep your voice down, David hissed, looking anxiously at the surrounding tables. People are watching. Yes, they are, I agreed. Uncomfortable, isn't it? Being exposed in public. Catherine, please, David's voice took on the soothing tone he used when trying to manage difficult clients. This is all a misunderstanding. Elise and I work together. Don't. Mark's single word cut through David's attempt at deception. Don't compound your betrayal with lies. We have all the evidence. Every message, every photo, every secret meeting. The color returned to David's face in an angry flush. You've been spying on us? Both of you? What is this, some kind of setup? Setup? I laughed, the sound brittle even to my own ears. You set yourselves up. We merely compared notes. I think perhaps we should join you, Mark suggested, signaling a waiter. Since we all have so much to discuss. Before either David or Elise could object, Mark had arranged for our settings to be transferred to their table. The waitstaff, professional but clearly intrigued by the unfolding drama, quickly set 4 places. Perfect, Mark said, holding my chair as I sat directly across from David. Now we can have a civilized conversation. David looked trapped, his eyes darting between Mark and me, then to the exit, as if calculating his escape options. Elise sat rigidly beside him, her face a careful mask, though her rapidly blinking eyes betrayed her distress. Shall we order? I suggested, picking up a menu with steady hands that surprised even me. The sea base is supposed to be excellent. I've lost my appetite, Elise muttered, shooting a venomous look at her husband. That's a shame, Mark replied smoothly. But then, you've always been prone to dramatic gestures, haven't you, Elise? A waiter approached with a wine list, hesitating as he sensed the tension at our table. Bring another bottle of the Veuve Clicquot, Mark instructed. We're celebrating tonight. Celebrating what? David demanded once the waiter had gone, his voice low but intense. The destruction of 2 marriages? Is that what gets you off, Carrington? Mark's smile didn't reach his eyes. Our marriages were destroyed the moment you decided my wife was an acceptable addition to your extracurricular activities, more. This is insane, Elise hissed, leaning forward. You both completely overreacted. Mark, we can discuss this at home. Like we discussed it when I asked about your late nights at the office? Mark countered, his composure never wavering. Or when I questioned the credit card charges from hotels I never visited? You've had plenty of opportunities for discussion, Elise. You chose deception instead. I turned to David, who was staring at his water glass as if it held answers. Did you ever plan to tell me? Or was I just supposed to go on believing in our marriage while you built a life with her on the side? David finally met my eyes. Catherine, you have to understand, things between us haven't been the same for years. You're always wrapped up in your work, always. Don't you dare blame her, Elise snapped unexpectedly. You told me your marriage was practically over, that Catherine was cold and distant. I what? David's head whipped toward her in alarm. That she didn't understand you like I did, Elise continued, her composure cracking further. You said you were staying only because the timing wasn't right to leave. Her words hit me hard. David had not only betrayed me but had rewritten our entire marriage to justify his infidelity. Is that true, David? I asked quietly. Is that what you told her? The champagne arrived, creating a momentary interruption. Mark calmly instructed the waiter to pour 4 glasses, then dismissed him with a generous tip and a request for privacy. Answer her question, more, Mark said when we were alone again. Is that what you told my wife? David's silence was answer enough. You coward, I whispered. I didn't mean, David began, then stopped himself. This isn't how this was supposed to go. No, I imagine not, I replied. You probably envisioned years more of deception. Maybe eventually leaving me with some sanitized explanation that preserved your image as the good guy. We didn't want to hurt anyone, Elise insisted, reaching for her champagne with a slightly trembling hand. And yet, here we are, Mark observed dryly. All thoroughly hurt. What do you want from us? David demanded, looking between Mark and me. Public humiliation? Money? What's the point of this ambush? Mark lifted his champagne glass. Clarity. Truth. The opportunity to look you both in the eyes as we inform you that your carefully constructed fantasy is over. And to give you this, I added, reaching into my purse to withdraw a sealed envelope, which I placed in front of David. Divorce papers, already filed. You'll be formally served tomorrow, but I thought you should know what's coming. David stared at the envelope as if it might bite him. You can't be serious. Oh, but I am. I turned to Mark. Your turn. Mark produced a similar envelope and placed it before Elise. Likewise. My attorney will contact yours tomorrow. Elise's careful mask finally crumbled. Mark, please, we can work through this. It was a mistake, a stupid mistake. A 6-month mistake? Mark raised an eyebrow. With elaborate planning, hotel rooms, and discussions of your future together? That's not a mistake, Elise. That's a choice. Multiple choices, made day after day. Catherine, David tried again, reaching for my hand across the table. I pulled away before he could touch me. We've been together since college. 12 years of marriage. You can't just throw that away over one affair? I finished for him. I'm not throwing away anything, David. You already did that the first time you took her to bed. The wine glass shattered against the restaurant floor, fragments catching the light like diamonds before disappearing into darkness. Elise had knocked it over as she stood abruptly, her composure completely gone now. You smug bastard, she hissed at her husband. You promised we would handle this carefully. You promised we would both leave our marriages with dignity once the timing was right. Mark looked up at his wife, his calm finally tinged with genuine curiosity. And when exactly was the right timing scheduled, Elise? After Sophia's graduation? After you'd secured your position on the museum board using my donations and connections? You never understood me, she spat. Never appreciated what I gave up to be your perfect corporate wife while you hid behind your law books and your stupid camera. I watched the exchange with a strange detachment, as if viewing a play whose ending I already knew. Beside me, David sat frozen, perhaps realizing for the first time the full scope of the disaster he'd helped create. I think we're done here, Mark said evenly, standing and offering me his hand. Catherine? Wait, David pleaded, finally finding his voice again. Catherine, don't leave like this. Let's talk about this, please. We can fix this. I regarded my husband, the man I'd loved for most of my adult life, and felt a curious emptiness where pain should have been. There's nothing to fix, David. It's already broken beyond repair. I stood and took Mark's arm, conscious of the eyes following us as we made our way through the now silent restaurant. Behind us, I heard Elise's voice rise in recrimination, then David's angry response. Their private drama was becoming very public indeed. Outside in the cool night air, I finally allowed myself to tremble, the adrenaline of confrontation giving way to exhaustion. "Are you all right?" Mark asked quietly, his hand steady at my elbow. "No," I answered honestly. "But I will be." His driver appeared with impeccable timing, opening the car door for us. As we settled into the back seat, I caught a final glimpse of the restaurant entrance, where David had followed us outside and stood watching our departure, his face a mask of shock and dawning comprehension. I didn't look back again. The morning after our confrontation at Oriole brought rain, heavy sheets of it pounding against the windows of the hotel room I'd checked into the previous night. I hadn't been able to face returning to the house I shared with David, not after everything that had transpired. I lay in the unfamiliar bed, listening to the storm and scrolling through the flood of text messages David had sent throughout the night. "Catherine, please call me. We need to talk about this rationally. It wasn't what you think. Elise and I got carried away, but we were going to end it. I never meant to hurt you. Where are you? I'm worried. This is insane. You can't just throw away 12 years of marriage without giving me a chance to explain. You planned this with Carrington? How long have you two been working together behind our backs?" The last one almost made me laugh at its hypocrisy. I silenced my phone and ordered room service, strong coffee and toast I couldn't bring myself to eat. By noon, the rain had cleared, and I forced myself to face the next step, returning home to collect some essential belongings. I'd hoped to avoid seeing David, but his car was in the driveway when I arrived. Taking a deep breath, I used my key and entered the house that no longer felt like mine. David was waiting in the living room, unshaven and bleary-eyed, looking as though he hadn't slept. He jumped up when he saw me. "Catherine. Thank God. Where have you been?" "I've been calling all night. I needed space." I kept my voice neutral, moving past him toward the stairs. "I'm just here to pack some things." He followed me. "You can't just leave. We need to talk about this." "We have nothing to talk about." I entered our bedroom, his bedroom now, I supposed, and pulled a suitcase from the closet. "Nothing to," David ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "Catherine, you ambushed me in a public restaurant with another man. You filed for divorce without even giving me a chance to explain." I turned to face him, anger finally breaking through my careful composure. "Explain what, David? How you've been lying to me for months? How you told another woman our marriage was practically over? Or maybe how you planned to keep deceiving me until it was convenient to leave?" "It wasn't like that." His voice dropped, taking on the earnest tone he used when trying to close difficult deals. "Elise and I, it started as just friendship. Then things got complicated. We made a mistake, yes, but..." "A 6-month mistake," I echoed Mark's words from the night before. "With hotel rooms and secret meetings and plans for the future." "That's not a mistake, David. That's a deliberate campaign of deception." "I still love you," he insisted, moving closer. Elise she was exciting, different. But what we have is real, Catherine. 12 years. You can't just throw that away. I stepped back, maintaining distance between us. "You already threw it away. I'm just acknowledging what's already happened. Give me another chance." His eyes were pleading now. "People make mistakes. Marriages survive affairs all the time. Not this marriage." I turned back to the closet, pulling clothes from hangers and placing them methodically in the suitcase. "Not after what you said about me to her. Not after you made me feel crazy for suspecting something was wrong all these months. What can I do?" There was desperation in his voice now. "Tell me what I can do to fix this." I paused, a sweater in my hands, the blue cashmere he'd given me for Christmas last year. Had he already been seeing Elise then? The thought made me drop the sweater back into the closet. Nothing, I said simply. There's nothing you can do. It's over, David. It's Carrington, isn't it? His tone shifted suddenly, accusation replacing pleading. You two seemed awfully comfortable together last night. How long has that been going on? The suggestion was so absurd I actually laughed. Are you seriously trying to accuse me of having an affair with Mark? We met 3 days ago when I discovered your infidelity. And you immediately teamed up to ambush us? Planned this whole scenario together? That seems awfully cozy for new acquaintances. We're united by a common betrayal, I said coldly. Nothing more. David scoffed. I saw how he looked at you. And how you took his arm when you left. Basic human decency looks a lot like romance when you've forgotten what it's like, I observed, zipping the now full suitcase. Mark and I are not involved. But even if we were, which we're not, you have absolutely no right to question who I spend time with anymore. I lifted the suitcase from the bed. I'll be staying at the Westside Hotel for now. My lawyer will contact you about dividing our assets. I'd appreciate it if you wouldn't try to contact me directly. Catherine, David moved to block the doorway. Don't do this. Just give us one chance to talk this through. Counseling, maybe. Something. Move, David. Not until you agree to at least consider. Move, I repeated, more forcefully. Or I'll call Mark's lawyer and add harassment to the divorce filing. The mention of Mark seemed to deflate him. He stepped aside, watching silently as I made my way downstairs. At the front door, I paused and removed my house key from my keyring, placing it on the entry table with a soft click. For what it's worth, I said without turning around, I really did love you. I thought we were building something that would last forever. We still can, he said quietly. I shook my head. No. We can't. I opened the door, then added. I hope she was worth it. I was 3 steps down the walkway when my phone buzzed with a text message from Mark. How are you holding up? I waited until I was in the car before responding, just retrieved some things from the house. David was there. Unpleasant but survivable. You? His reply came quickly, similar situation with Elise. Would you be interested in coffee later? Neutral territory to compare notes. I hesitated, wondering if meeting Mark again was wise. But the thought of sitting alone in a hotel room with nothing but my thoughts for company was worse. Coffee sounds good, I texted back. The place on 9th Street where we first met? Perfect. 3 p.m.? See you then. Riverside Coffee was busier than it had been during our first meeting, the afternoon crowd filling most tables with students and remote workers hunched over laptops. Mark had secured a corner table nonetheless, 2 steaming mugs already waiting when I arrived. I remembered you take it black, he said, standing as I approached. Good memory. I settled into the chair across from him, noting that he looked as exhausted as I felt, the circles under his eyes suggesting his night had been as sleepless as mine. Thank you for suggesting this. It's good to see a friendly face. How did it go with David? He asked, warming his hands around his own mug. I shrugged. About as expected. Denial, then bargaining, then accusations that you and I are having an affair. Mark's eyebrow raised slightly. Elise suggested the same thing. Apparently, we were very convincing dinner companions. Guilty consciences project, I observed. How is she taking it? Poorly. Mark took a sip of coffee. She cycled between tears, rage, and calculating how much of our assets she could claim. I've already moved to the guest room and scheduled a locksmith to change the codes to my home office. You think she would take things? I think Elise is nothing if not pragmatic about her self-interest. His tone was matter-of-fact rather than bitter. She knows the prenuptial agreement limits what she can claim unless she can prove certain breaches on my part. I wouldn't put it past her to manufacture evidence. That sounds exhausting. It is. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so reminiscent of David that I felt a momentary pang. But enough about our marital disasters. How are you really doing, Catherine? The sincerity in his question caught me off guard. Since discovering David's betrayal, I'd been so focused on my plan, on maintaining composure, on the mechanics of separation, that I hadn't truly allowed myself to feel the full weight of what had happened. I don't know, I admitted. Sometimes I'm angry, sometimes numb. Sometimes I wonder if I'm overreacting, if I should have given him another chance. I looked down at my coffee. Is that pathetic? Not at all. Mark's voice was gentle. 12 years is a significant investment. It's natural to question whether it's worth salvaging. But you're not questioning your decision to divorce Elise, I pointed out. Mark was quiet for a moment. Our situations are different. Elise and I, the affair was just the final chapter of a story that's been ending for years. We stayed together for Sophia, for appearances, for convenience. When I found out about David, I wasn't even surprised, just disappointed that she'd been so careless. The blunt assessment of his marriage made me wonder about my own. Had David and I been slowly disconnecting for years without my noticing? Had I been so wrapped up in my design work, in creating perfect spaces for others, that I'd missed the decay in my own home? I keep wondering what I missed, I confessed. What signs I overlooked? Don't do that to yourself, Mark said firmly. Their choices are not your responsibility. Logically, I know that. Emotionally, I shrugged. It's harder. It gets easier. He hesitated, then added, after my first divorce, I spent months analyzing every conversation, every argument, trying to pinpoint where things went wrong. Your first divorce? I was surprised, he hadn't mentioned a previous marriage. Before Elise. I was very young, 25, just out of law school. It lasted less than 2 years. A shadow crossed his face. Different circumstances, similar outcome. I'm sorry. Don't be. It taught me valuable lessons. One being that relationships end, but life continues. He smiled slightly. And that it's possible to rebuild, to find happiness again, even when it seems impossible in the moment. His words offered a perspective I badly needed, a glimpse of life beyond the immediate pain and chaos. Thank you for saying that, I said softly. And for all of this. Supporting a stranger through her marital collapse wasn't how you planned to spend your week, I'm sure. We're hardly strangers anymore, Mark pointed out. And as for support, it's mutual. Having an ally in this mess has made it more bearable. We fell into comfortable conversation after that, deliberately steering away from the subject of our spouses to discover more about each other. I learned that Mark had grown up in a small town in Pennsylvania, had worked his way through college and law school, and that photography had been his passion since his father gave him an old camera for his 12th birthday. In turn, I told him about my childhood in California, my early interest in architecture that evolved into interior design, and my dream of someday designing a small boutique hotel from the ground up. You should do it, he said when I mentioned this last ambition. Life's too short to postpone the things that matter to you. Maybe I will, I replied, surprised to find I meant it. Once the dust settles. We talked until the cafe began to empty, the afternoon crowd departing as evening approached. When we finally left, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the street. Would you like to get dinner? Mark asked as we stood outside. Nothing fancy, there's a good Thai place around the corner. I hesitated, suddenly aware of how our meeting might appear to outsiders, or to our respective spouses, should they hear about it. I'm not sure that's a good idea. Mark immediately nodded. Of course. I didn't mean to presume. It's not that I don't want to, I clarified. It's just complicated. The timing, the circumstances. I understand completely. His smile was genuine. Rain check, perhaps. When things are less complicated. I'd like that. We parted with an awkward moment of indecision, handshake? Hug? Simple goodbye, before settling on a brief, slightly formal embrace that nonetheless left me feeling steadier than I had in days. Back at my hotel, I ordered room service and opened my laptop to check emails. Among the usual client correspondence was a message from Mark, sent just minutes after we'd parted. Catherine. I realized I never properly thanked you for your courage in bringing Elise's infidelity to my attention. Many would have dealt with their own situation privately without considering the other affected party. Your integrity in difficult circumstances is remarkable. If you need any assistance navigating the legal aspects of your separation, please don't hesitate to ask. While I can't represent you directly due to conflict of interest, I can recommend several excellent divorce attorneys who would serve you well. Take care of yourself in the days ahead. Mark. I read the email twice, struck by its formality compared to our easy conversation earlier. Yet something about its tone was comforting, a reminder that whatever connection we were forming was built on mutual respect rather than desperate rebound attraction. I replied simply, "Thank you, Mark. Your support means more than you know. Catherine." Then I closed my laptop and stared out the hotel window at the city lights, feeling, for the first time since discovering David's betrayal, that I might eventually be okay. The following weeks passed in a blur of practical necessities, meetings with my lawyer, negotiations over asset division, finding a suitable apartment to rent while the divorce proceeded. David continued his campaign of reconciliation through increasingly desperate text messages and occasional ambushes at my office, until my lawyer threatened a restraining order. Mark and I stayed in touch, our communications evolving from formal emails to occasional texts, then to coffee every few days, a lifeline of understanding in the midst of chaos. We were careful to meet in public places, mindful of appearances, though neither of us articulated why that mattered. 3 weeks after the confrontation at Oriole, I was selecting paint samples for my new apartment when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Elise Carrington. We need to talk. The Regent Hotel Bar, 7 p.m. tonight. Come alone." I stared at the message in disbelief. What could Elise possibly want from me? My first instinct was to ignore it, but curiosity won out. I texted back. "Why would I meet with you?" Her response was immediate, "Because what I have to tell you affects both of us. And because you owe me." "I owe you nothing," I replied. 7 p.m. One conversation. Then we never have to speak again. Against my better judgment, I found myself in the elegant lounge of the Regent at 6:55 that evening. Elise was already there, perched on a stool at the bar, nursing what looked like a martini. She wore a sleek black dress that highlighted her figure, hair perfectly styled, makeup flawless. Even in the midst of divorce, she maintained her polished appearance. "Catherine," she acknowledged as I slid onto the stool beside her. "Thank you for coming." "I'm listening," I said coolly, declining the bartender's offer with a shake of my head. I wanted to stay clear-headed for whatever this was. Elise took a long sip of her drink before speaking. "You and Mark seem to be getting quite close." The statement caught me off guard. "That's not your concern." "Perhaps not." She turned to face me fully. "But I thought you should know exactly what you're getting involved with. If you invited me here to badmouth your husband, ex-husband, soon enough." She smiled thinly. "And no, that's not why I asked you here. I wanted to warn you." "Warn me?" I couldn't keep the skepticism from my voice. "About Mark? The man you cheated on with my husband?" "Yes." She swirled her drink, ice clinking against glass. "Mark isn't the wronged husband he's pretending to be. Our marriage was over long before David came into the picture. If you're trying to justify your affair—" "I'm not justifying anything," she interrupted. "I'm telling you that Mark knew about David and me for months. He didn't care. Our marriage has been a convenient arrangement for years. He gets his perfect corporate wife for professional appearances, I get financial security and social status." I started to stand. "I'm not interested in your version of events." "Did he tell you about his first wife?" Elise asked, stopping me. "About what really happened?" Despite myself, I hesitated. Mark had mentioned a brief early marriage but few details. Seeing my pause, Elise pressed on. He drove her to a breakdown. Control, Catherine. That's what Mark craves. He controlled every aspect of her life until she couldn't take it anymore. I don't believe you, I said, but uncertainty had crept in. Ask him about Rebecca. Ask him why she left the country after their divorce. Ask him about the non-disclosure agreement. Elise finished her martini in one smooth swallow. Mark isn't the white knight you think he is. He's using you to punish me, just like he's using this divorce to punish me financially. Why are you telling me this? Elise shrugged one elegant shoulder. Consider it a professional courtesy from one wronged wife to another. We both made mistakes in our marriages. The difference is, I'm not pretending to be a victim. She stood, placing money on the bar. Think about it, Catherine. Has Mark ever asked what you want, or has he been guiding you every step of the way? Suggesting strategies, recommending lawyers, being the perfect supportive friend while steering you exactly where he wants you to go? Without waiting for a response, she walked away, leaving me with troubling questions I couldn't easily dismiss. Later that night, I called Mark, intending to ask about his first wife. When he answered, the warmth in his voice made me hesitate. Catherine? Everything all right? Yes. I took a deep breath. Do you have time to meet tomorrow? There's something I'd like to talk about. Of course. Lunch? There's a new place on Riverside I've been meaning to try. Perfect, I agreed, deciding a public setting was best for the conversation ahead. Mark? Yes? Is there anything about your past, about your previous marriage, that I should know? The silence that followed was brief but telling. When he spoke again, his tone was carefully neutral. I suppose there is. Tomorrow, then? Tomorrow, I confirmed, ending the call with a knot of anxiety forming in my stomach. I spent a restless night wondering if I'd been naive, if the connection I'd felt with Mark had been manipulation rather than genuine understanding. By morning, I'd resolved to ask direct questions and judge his responses carefully. Riverside Bistro was busy with the lunch crowd when I arrived the next day. Mark was already seated at a corner table, looking more serious than I'd seen him since our first meeting. He stood as I approached, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. Catherine. Mark. I took the seat across from him, declining a menu from the hovering waiter. I'm not very hungry. Just coffee, then? When I nodded, he ordered for both of us, then turned his attention fully to me. You had questions about my first marriage. Direct. No pretense. It was one of the things I'd appreciated about him. Yes. I wrapped my hands around the water glass, needing something to hold. I met with Elise yesterday. His expression tightened almost imperceptibly. I see. She told me to ask you about Rebecca. About why she left the country after your divorce. About a non-disclosure agreement. Mark was silent for a long moment, his fingers tapping lightly against the tablecloth, the first nervous gesture I'd seen from him. Finally, he sighed. Rebecca was my first wife. We married young, too young. The divorce was difficult. How difficult? He met my eyes directly. She had mental health issues that emerged during our marriage. Severe anxiety, depression, eventually diagnosed as bipolar disorder. When I sought divorce, she threatened to harm herself. And the non-disclosure agreement? Standard legal protection. Her family was wealthy, concerned about privacy. The agreement prevented either of us from discussing the marriage publicly. It was mutual, not one-sided. And her leaving the country? Her choice. She wanted a fresh start, away from painful memories. Last I heard, she was living in London, remarried, doing well. He leaned forward slightly. Catherine, what exactly did Elise tell you? I hesitated, then decided on complete honesty. She said you were controlling. That you drove Rebecca to a breakdown. That you knew about her affair with David for months and didn't care because your marriage was just a convenient arrangement. Mark's laugh held no humor. Of course she did. He ran a hand through his hair. Elise excels at twisting the truth to suit her narrative. So none of it's true? Some of it is. His frankness surprised me. Rebecca did have a breakdown, but not because of me, because she stopped taking her medication. As for knowing about the affair. He paused as our coffee arrived, waiting until the waiter departed. I suspected something was wrong. Elise was increasingly distant, secretive about her phone. But I didn't have confirmation until you showed me the evidence. And your marriage being an arrangement? His smile was sad. There's perhaps more truth to that than I'd like to admit. We've been living separate lives under the same roof for years. But that doesn't mean I condoned or accepted her infidelity. I studied him, trying to reconcile his version with Elise's, searching for signs of deception in his face, his tone, his body language. Why would she tell me these things? I asked finally. Why do you think? His voice was gentle. She sees us becoming close. It threatens her narrative of being the wronged party in our divorce. And perhaps. He hesitated. Perhaps what? Perhaps she's jealous, he suggested quietly. Of whatever is developing between us. The statement hung in the air, neither of us immediately addressing its implications. I stared at my coffee, turning his words over in my mind. Is something developing between us, Mark? I asked finally, looking up to meet his gaze. I think you know the answer to that, he replied softly. But the timing is complicated. Very complicated, I agreed. We're both vulnerable right now. Both recovering from betrayal. It would be easy to mistake comfort for connection. Yes, it would. And yet. He reached across the table, not quite touching my hand but close enough that I felt the invitation. I find myself thinking about you even when divorce negotiations and work demands should be consuming all my attention. The confession, so simply stated, sent warmth spreading through me despite my reservations. I think about you too, I admitted. But I'm scared, Mark. I don't trust my judgment right now. I just found out my husband of 12 years has been lying to me for months. How can I trust any feelings I'm having? You can't, he said bluntly. Neither can I. That's why, much as I'd like to explore whatever this is between us, I think we need to proceed with caution. His honesty was refreshing, especially after weeks of David's manipulations and Elise's insinuations. So what do we do? I asked. We continue as we have been. Friends. Supporting each other through difficult times. And when the dust settles, when we're both legally free and emotionally ready, we reassess. He smiled slightly. If the connection is real, it will still be there when the timing is right. I nodded slowly, feeling both relief and disappointment at his practical approach. That sounds wise. I've been accused of many things, Mark said dryly, but wisdom is rarely among them. That made me laugh, releasing some of the tension that had built between us. We finally ordered food, our conversation shifting to safer topics, my new apartment, a photography exhibit he was considering, mutual complaints about our respective lawyers' billing practices. By the time we parted, the questions Elise had raised still lingered in my mind, but they had lost much of their power. Mark had answered me honestly, acknowledging complications without excuses or manipulations. Whether his version was the complete truth, I couldn't know for certain, but I chose to believe him until given reason not to. As we stood outside the restaurant preparing to go our separate ways, Mark hesitated, then said, "For what it's worth, Catherine, I'm grateful our paths crossed, despite the circumstances." "So am I," I replied, and was surprised to realize how deeply I meant it. 2 months after the confrontation at Oriole, my divorce from David was progressing through the legal system with surprising efficiency. His initial attempts at reconciliation had given way to petty disputes over property division, particularly regarding the house we had shared. My lawyer assured me we were in a strong position, especially given the evidence of his infidelity, but the process remained emotionally draining. Mark and I continued our cautious friendship, meeting regularly for coffee or lunch, carefully avoiding any situation that might be misconstrued as romantic. We were both determined to handle our divorces with dignity, giving no ammunition to our soon-to-be ex-spouses who still occasionally suggested our relationship had begun before their affair was discovered. On a crisp October morning, I was sketching design concepts in my new apartment, a bright, airy space with large windows overlooking a small neighborhood park, when my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Catherine Moore?" a woman's voice asked when I answered. "Speaking. My name is Rebecca Winters. Formerly Rebecca Carrington. I believe you've been spending time with my ex-husband, Mark." My hand froze mid-sketch, my pulse quickening. "Yes, I know Mark. How did you get my number?" "That's not important." Her tone was brisk, British accented. "What's important is that we talk. I understand you're going through a divorce because your husband had an affair with Mark's wife." Yes, that's correct," I confirmed, unsettled by her knowledge of my personal situation. "And Mark has positioned himself as your ally, your friend, perhaps potentially more?" "I don't see how that's any of your business," I replied, defenses rising. "It is when I see history repeating itself," Rebecca said. "Look, I'm not calling to cause trouble. But there are things you should know about Mark before you get any deeper into a relationship with him." I considered hanging up, but curiosity won out. "Such as?" "Mark Carrington is charming, attentive, and incredibly skilled at presenting himself as exactly what a woman needs at her most vulnerable moment." Her voice was steady, matter-of-fact. "He was my white knight too, once. If you're calling to warn me that Mark is some kind of predator—" "Not a predator," she interrupted. "A controller. Everything starts wonderfully. He's supportive, understanding, gives you space when you need it. Then slowly, so gradually you barely notice, he begins reshaping your life. Your friends aren't quite good enough. Your career decisions could be more strategic. Your wardrobe could be more sophisticated." I thought of Mark's gentle suggestions about attorneys, his advice on handling the divorce, all of which had seemed helpful rather than controlling. "Mark told me about your bipolar disorder," I said. "That you stopped taking medication." Rebecca's laugh was sharp. "Of course he did. Did he mention that I sought treatment for anxiety because he constantly criticized every decision I made? Or that the bipolar diagnosis came from a psychiatrist he selected? Or that the medication made me so foggy I couldn't function? Why would I believe you over him?" I asked. "You shouldn't necessarily," she admitted. "I'm a stranger calling out of the blue. But ask yourself this, how did Mark respond when Elise mentioned me to you?" I hesitated. "He was defensive. But anyone would be if accused of." "Not defensive," Rebecca corrected. "Prepared. He had answers ready, didn't he?" A neat narrative that made me sound unstable while positioning him as the concerned husband. The observation was uncomfortably accurate. "Who told you I was spending time with Mark?" I asked. "Elise contacted me," Rebecca said. "We've stayed in touch over the years. She reached out after their confrontation at Oriole." "So you're doing Elise's bidding?" My skepticism returned. "The woman who was sleeping with my husband?" "I have no loyalty to Elise," Rebecca said flatly. "What she did to you was wrong. But Mark isn't the innocent party he portrays himself as. Their marriage has been broken for years." "Which doesn't justify infidelity," I countered. "No, it doesn't," she agreed. "Just, be careful, Catherine. Watch for the signs." The subtle criticisms disguised as helpful advice. The way he positions himself as the only person who truly understands you. The isolation from others who might offer different perspectives. I wanted to dismiss her warnings entirely, but something in her tone, the absence of hysteria or vindictiveness, gave me pause. "I appreciate your concern," I said carefully. "But Mark and I are just friends supporting each other through difficult divorces. For now, Rebecca said. Just remember what I've said if things progress. And Catherine? The NDA he mentioned? It was completely one-sided. I'm violating it by speaking to you, which should tell you how concerned I am. After she hung up, I sat motionless, her words echoing in my mind. The sensible response would be to disregard the call entirely, a desperate attempt by Elise to drive a wedge between Mark and me. Yet Rebecca had sounded genuinely concerned rather than manipulative. I pulled out my phone and texted Mark, "Are you free to talk? Something's come up." His reply came almost immediately, "Of course. What's wrong?" Rather than explaining by text, I called him. When he answered, I got straight to the point. "Rebecca contacted me today." The silence that followed spoke volumes. "Mark? I'm here," he said finally. "What did she want?" "To warn me about you." I kept my tone neutral. "She painted quite a different picture of your marriage than you did." "I can imagine." His sigh carried through the phone. "Catherine, Rebecca has been trying to rewrite our history for years. She's not well." "That's what she said you'd say," I interrupted. "She also mentioned that the NDA was one-sided." "Is that true?" Another pause. "It's complicated. The agreement had mutual confidentiality clauses, but yes, the penalties applied primarily to her. Her family insisted on it to protect their reputation." "And the psychiatrist? The medication? She told you I controlled her medical care?" Mark's voice hardened slightly. "I suggested a doctor when she was having panic attacks. Everything after that was between her and her physicians." "Mark, I don't know what to believe." "I understand." His tone softened. "Rebecca has her version of events. I have mine. The truth likely lies somewhere in between." His admission surprised me. I'd expected absolute denial. "Would it help to meet in person?" he suggested. "This isn't a conversation we should have over the phone." We arranged to meet at a small park near my apartment, neutral ground where we could talk privately. When I arrived, Mark was already there, sitting on a bench overlooking the duck pond. He looked troubled, none of his usual composure evident. "Thank you for coming," he said as I sat beside him, leaving space between us. "I almost didn't," I admitted. He nodded. "I wouldn't have blamed you." After a moment, he continued, "My marriage to Rebecca was a disaster, Catherine. We were wrong for each other from the start, but too young and stubborn to admit it. She says you controlled her." "I tried to help her." Mark's gaze remained on the water. "Perhaps too forcefully. She was brilliant but directionless, struggling with anxiety that paralyzed her decision-making. I thought I knew what was best." He turned to face me. "I was wrong. I pushed too hard, expected too much, didn't listen enough." The admission wasn't what I'd expected. "So there's truth to what she said?" "Some," he acknowledged. "Not the caricature of a manipulative monster she likely described, but yes, I was controlling in ways I didn't recognize until years of therapy helped me see the patterns." "And Elise? Was that marriage also a mistake?" "Different mistake, similar outcome." A humorless smile crossed his face. "With Elise, I overcorrected. Gave her complete freedom, avoided any hint of control. We essentially lived separate lives under one roof, connected only by convenience and Sophia." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "You could have denied everything," made Rebecca sound completely unstable. "Because I respect you too much to lie," he said simply. "And because whatever is developing between us, I want it to start with truth, not convenient fictions." The admission disarmed me. "I don't know if I can trust my judgment right now, Mark. With David's betrayal, the divorce, now these warnings about you. I feel like I'm navigating a minefield blindfolded." "Then let's slow down," he suggested. "Give yourself time to process everything. If there's something genuine between us, it will still be there when you're ready." His willingness to step back rather than press his case reassured me more than any defense could have. Thank you for being honest, I said finally. It's the least you deserve. We sat in silence, watching ducks glide across the pond's surface. For the first time since meeting Mark, I felt I was seeing the real person, flawed, complex, capable of both mistakes and growth, rather than the perfectly controlled exterior he usually presented. I should go, I said eventually. I need time to think. Of course. He made no move to touch me as we stood. Catherine? Whatever you decide, I'm grateful for your friendship these past months. It's meant more than you know. I nodded, unable to articulate my own jumbled feelings, and walked away. The next week passed in a blur of work and divorce proceedings. David had finally stopped his reconciliation attempts and was now fully focused on securing favorable terms, particularly regarding our house. I threw myself into client projects, grateful for the distraction from my personal turmoil. I didn't contact Mark, and he respected my silence, sending only a brief text, taking a step back as promised. Here if you need me. His restraint was telling, neither pressuring nor completely disappearing. 9 days after our park conversation, my lawyer called with news. David had suddenly agreed to my settlement terms, including selling the house and splitting the proceeds equally. What changed his mind? I asked, suspicious of the abrupt capitulation. Honestly? No idea, she admitted. His attorney just called and said they're accepting our proposal in full. I'd take the win and run with it. Later that afternoon, I received an unexpected text from David. I signed the papers. It's done. I'm sorry for everything, Catherine. I truly am. The message felt like the final chapter closing on our marriage, bringing both sadness and relief. On impulse, I forwarded a screenshot to Mark with the message. David accepted the settlement. It's almost over. His reply came quickly. Congratulations. How are you feeling? Relieved. Sad. Free. All of the above. Would you like to celebrate? Or commiserate? Or both? I hesitated, then replied, both. Dinner tomorrow? I'll pick you up at 7. When I opened my door the following evening, Mark stood holding a small bouquet of sunflowers, my favorite, though I couldn't remember telling him that. Not roses, he explained, handing them to me. Too romantic for the occasion. But something bright seemed appropriate for marking a new chapter. The thoughtfulness of the gesture touched me. They're perfect. Thank you. Over dinner at a quiet neighborhood bistro, I told him about the settlement and my mixed emotions about the marriage officially ending. He listened attentively, offering neither platitudes nor advice, just understanding. I'd been thinking about what Rebecca said, I admitted as our meals arrived. And about your response. And? His expression was carefully neutral. I appreciate your honesty that day. It would have been easier to dismiss her as crazy or vindictive. Perhaps, he acknowledged. But it wouldn't have been true. Or fair to you. I'm still cautious, Mark. About us, about what might happen next. As you should be, he said. We've both been through emotional hurricanes. Rushing into something new would be unwise. But? I prompted, sensing there was more. But I find myself hoping that when the storms have passed, we might explore whatever this connection between us is. His eyes met mine. At your pace, with your boundaries firmly in place. The sincerity in his gaze made something shift inside me, not trust completely restored, but a willingness to keep the door open to possibilities. I'd like that, I said softly. 6 months later, on a warm spring evening, I stood in the doorway of my completed apartment renovation, a project that had become therapeutic during the final stages of my divorce. The space reflected my emerging new identity, clean lines and warm colors, elements of my previous style blended with bolder choices I'd never have made while with David. Mark had helped hang the last artwork that afternoon, and now stood in the kitchen uncorking a bottle of champagne. Our relationship had developed slowly, deliberately, casual dates evolving into deeper conversations, physical affection progressing at a measured pace. We'd talked extensively about our past relationships, my concerns about his controlling tendencies, his fear of repeating old patterns. To new beginnings, he said, handing me a glass of champagne. And beautiful spaces created by an extraordinarily talented designer. And to honesty, I added. Even when it's uncomfortable. His smile was warm as we clinked glasses. Especially then. As we settled onto the couch, his arm comfortably around my shoulders, I reflected on the unexpected journey that had brought us here. What began with betrayal and confrontation had gradually transformed into something I hadn't believed possible again: trust, connection, and the promise of a future built on truth rather than convenient illusions. When Mark kissed me, it felt like both an ending and a beginning, the final chapter of our separate tragedies and the first page of a story we were choosing to write together. "Stay tonight?" I asked when we parted. "Are you sure?" "I am." And for the first time in a very long time, I truly was.